She said I was cold. That's what she told me the night she packed a small bag and stormed out of the house, her voice shaking with that rehearsed mix of exhaustion and righteousness. You don't touch me, you don't listen, you've turned into ice. I sat there on the edge of the bed, stunned, because in my head I wasn't cold. I was working late hours to pay off debts, making sure the mortgage was never late, fixing leaky pipes at 2 a.m. I thought love was responsibility, that showing up every day was better than grand gestures, but in her eyes it wasn't enough. She wanted warmth, romance, fireworks, and I'll admit it, I didn't give her that. Not in the way she wanted. Still, I never thought cold was an invitation for betrayal. You know how sometimes life throws you a scene so absurd you almost laugh before the pain sinks in. That's what happened 3 nights after she left. I'd set up our security system years ago, 4 cameras, 1 in the living room, 1 in the kitchen, 1 pointing at the front door, and 1 covering the patio. We never thought of them as much more than a safety net. But that night, while lying awake at 2:30 a.m., I got a motion alert. I almost ignored it. Probably the neighbor's cat again, I thought. But I opened the app and there it was, her walking back into my house like she still lived there. And she wasn't alone. He came in first, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize. She followed behind, laughing softly, trying to shush him. And then the gut punch. Within 10 minutes they were in the living room and this guy, this stranger, was wearing my robe. My robe. The old navy blue one with the worn sleeve that she always teased me about, the one I threw on every winter morning while making coffee. He had it on, draped around his shoulders like he owned it, and she curled into him on our couch like it was the most natural thing in the world. I swear to you, I felt something inside me crack in a way I didn't know was possible. Betrayal isn't just seeing your partner with someone else, it's watching them overwrite your life in real time. That robe wasn't just cloth, it was mine. It had years of my mornings stitched into it, and seeing him in it, holding her, while she smiled in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months, it felt like erasure, like I'd been replaced in my own home, in my own skin. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the phone screen burning my eyes, hands trembling, but not from rage, at least not yet. At first it was disbelief. I watched every second, thinking maybe I was misinterpreting, maybe it was innocent, maybe they were just friends. But no friend wears another man's robe at 3 a.m. No friend has his hand tucked under the blanket with your wife like it's second nature. And here's the kicker. She'd told me I was cold, but watching her, laughing and cozying up to him in my robe, I realized what she really meant. I wasn't cold. I was steady, predictable, safe. And safe isn't sexy, not when you're chasing adrenaline. She didn't want warmth, she wanted novelty. She wanted the rush of being with someone new, someone who didn't remind her of bills, repairs, responsibilities. And instead of saying that, she put it on me. I was the problem. I was the cold one. That's how she justified stepping out. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I just lay there, replaying the footage over and over, burning every detail into my mind. The way she pulled her legs up onto the couch, the way she tugged the robe around him, the way she kissed his shoulder like she'd been doing it for years. Every second was a new blade, but I knew if I stormed over there, if I burst into the living room like some jealous cliché, it wouldn't end the way I wanted. She'd twist it. She'd say I was spying, that I was controlling, that this was exactly why she left. No, I wasn't going to give her that. The next morning, I went about my routine as if nothing had happened, shaved, went to work, answered emails. On the outside, I was composed, but inside, I was already planning. Because when someone desecrates your trust like that, you can't just scream and beg. That only feeds them. No, the most devastating revenge is calm, calculated truth, letting them fall into the hole they dug without lifting a finger to pull them out. I backed up the footage, every second of it, copied it to a hard drive, encrypted, labeled, and tucked away. I didn't know when or how I'd use it, but I knew one day it would matter, and then I started gathering more. Bank statements, phone records, little things that didn't seem like much until you put them together. Because while she was cuddling in my robe, she was still legally tied to me, financially, socially, even professionally. She thought she could rewrite her story overnight. I was going to remind her that actions have consequences. But here's the part that no one tells you. When you're betrayed like that, you don't just hurt. You start questioning everything. Was she ever really happy? Did she ever mean it when she said she loved me? Were all those little smiles and touches just placeholders until someone else came along? You torture yourself with questions that have no answers. And I did that for weeks. I'd sit in the quiet replaying our years together, looking for cracks I missed. It was like my brain was a detective desperate to solve a case that was already closed. The irony, she still texted me. Little things. Can you grab my coat from the dry cleaner? Do you know where the spare charger is? Like nothing had changed, like she hadn't turned my robe into a costume for her new romance. And every time my phone buzzed, I had to bite my tongue not to unleash what I knew. Because silence is a weapon too. It wasn't until a month later that the cracks in her fairy tale started to show. I heard from a mutual friend that the guy Mr. Robe wasn't exactly the catch she thought. He was unemployed, living off savings, the kind of man who looked good on a couch at 3 a.m. but had nothing to offer in daylight. And slowly, her texts got less casual, more pointed. Are you okay? Do you want to meet and talk? Translation: things weren't going the way she'd planned. But I didn't rush in. I didn't play the wounded husband waiting for scraps. I kept quiet, kept watching, kept building my case, because I knew that when the moment came, it wouldn't be about shouting matches or teary confrontations. It would be about truth. Cold, undeniable truth. The kind that doesn't just sting, it scars, and that moment did come. But if you want that part, how the footage came to light, how the Robe turned from her comfort to her downfall, that's where the story really sharpens its teeth. That's where the calm silence becomes devastating noise. Part 2. The night of the Robe was just the beginning. If part 1 was the cut, part 2 was where I twisted the knife back. Because once betrayal stops shocking you, it starts shaping you, and I wasn't going to be shaped into a victim. I was going to become the man who stood taller than the mess they made. I kept that footage close, like a loaded weapon hidden under the floorboards. I didn't show anyone, didn't leak it, didn't text it to her dad in a rage the way every nerve in my body told me to. No, I waited. Because timing is everything, and patience is the difference between looking bitter and looking brilliant. She tried to reel me back in. That's what betrayers do once the shine of their new fling starts to dull. The text changed tone. Suddenly it wasn't about charges or coats. It was about checking in, about asking if I was okay. Then came the calls, missed at first, then voicemails. Her voice softer, tentative, like she was testing if I'd still bite. And when I didn't, she grew bolder. One night, she even showed up at the house, knocked on the door, called my name. I watched her from the upstairs window, phone buzzing in my pocket with another motion alert from the very cameras that had caught her before. And I smiled, not because I wanted her back, but because I finally understood the power of silence. The guy in my robe, Eric, I later learned, same type as every cliché rebound, loud, confident, broke. He looked good in photos but couldn't back it up in real life. And slowly she realized that being warm with him meant shivering when the bills came due. The Robe was comfortable, sure, but it didn't come with the mortgage being paid on time, the fridge stocked, or the stability she'd once complained was boring. Meanwhile, I kept living. I threw myself into work, into the gym, into long drives with no destination. At first it was survival, distraction from the ache, but soon it became something else. I started liking who I was becoming. Sharper, leaner, calmer. Every mile I ran, every deal I closed at work, every night I fell asleep without checking my phone for her name. I was rebuilding, and with each brick I laid, she lost ground. Then came the opportunity. My cousin invited me to a family dinner. Nothing fancy, just a get-together. And guess who also showed up? Her parents. They'd always liked me, respected me even, but lately they'd gone quiet. I could tell she'd fed them her version of the story, how I was cold, how she needed space, how I drove her away. And they believed her, because why wouldn't they? All they had was her word against my silence. That's when I knew it was time. Not to rage, not to humiliate, but to reveal. A week later, her father called me, asking if we could meet for coffee. He looked tired, concerned. He wanted to know the truth. And that's when I pulled out the hard drive. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't add commentary. I just let the footage play. His daughter, my wife, walking into my home in the middle of the night with another man, wrapping him in my robe, curling up like it was her rightful place. The silence after the video ended was heavier than any shouting could have been. He rubbed his face, muttered something about not recognizing her anymore, and all I said was, "That's why I've stayed quiet. I didn't want to tarnish her, but I won't carry the blame for something I didn't do." He nodded. He got it. And just like that, the narrative shifted. See, that's the thing about truth. It doesn't need decoration. It just needs exposure. And once her family saw it, the sympathy she'd been bathing in started to dry up. Suddenly, it wasn't about the cold husband, it was about the daughter who snuck men into her marital home and dressed them in her husband's clothes. She'd written a script where I was the villain. The cameras rewrote it without me having to lift a pen. When she finally called again, this time sobbing, saying she wanted to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I just said, it looked exactly like what it was, and everyone has seen it. Then I hung up. No closure, no final hug, no drawn-out post-mortem. Just truth, left to rot in the open. Word spread, as it always does. Friends who had kept their distance started reaching out, not with pity, but with respect. "You handled it better than I ever could," one told me. And that's when it hit me. The robe had become more than just a symbol of betrayal. It became the symbol of how I won without losing myself. Months passed, papers were signed, the divorce finalized, and one morning, I pulled that robe out of the closet. For a moment I almost threw it away. Too much history, too much pain stitched into the seams, but then I slipped it on. And to my surprise, It didn't feel like a reminder of loss. It felt like reclamation, like I'd taken back what was mine. Not the cloth, but the dignity she tried to strip from me. She said I was cold. Maybe I was. But cold kept me steady while her fire burned out fast. Cold preserved me while her warmth fizzled into ashes. And in the end, cold was exactly what I needed to walk away whole while she was left clinging to excuses. So here I am, telling you this story, not because I want sympathy, not because I want applause, but because I want you to understand something simple. Betrayal doesn't define you unless you let it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't rage or retaliation. Sometimes it's just putting on your own robe, sitting in your own house, and knowing you survived what was meant to break you. And when I think back to that night, 2:30 a.m., the glow of the security feed, her laugh echoing off my walls, it doesn't sting anymore. If anything, it makes me smile. Because that was the night I stopped being blind. That was the night I saw the truth, and the truth set me free.